This all began over the weekend as the militant group Hamas launched a massive attack that caught Israel off guard. The next day, Israel declared war, and it began its counterattack in the latest escalation between these bitter enemies. I had the chance to talk with a terrorism expert, a history professor, and a Penn State student who grew up in Gaza about all the violence.
You can smell death everywhere.
Thousands of dead bodies, thousands of scared families. Israel and Hamas are now in a full-fledged war. Penn State grad student Haneen Shath grew up in Gaza and still has family there. She claims the attack on Israel was self-defense after years of suffering.
As a Palestinian of Gaza, I can tell you that growing up in Gaza means that you are growing up in a prison that you cannot escape at all.
Shath is having trouble talking with her siblings because communications are down, but she says they are alive.
I myself is still struggling with the trauma of losing one of my brothers in 2018, who was killed by the Israeli occupation. My brother was a civilian. He did nothing to Israel. His only crime was that he's a Palestinian.
The Hamas attack came as a shock to many, including those who have studied this conflict for years.
It was pretty surprising for people who study terrorism and watch terrorism. The attack was pretty massive. It was a complex, coordinated attack, which is pretty atypical for terrorist attacks.
Others aren't surprised at all.
I was not surprised that the Palestinian has the motivation to take such a revengeful action. I know how people suffer there and how they feel helpless.
It's a bitter dispute dating back to Israel's 1948 formation.
What we see here is the explosion of that.
It was clearly the product of a long, planned assault that involved enormous numbers of teams of militants.
And it's likely to be a long fight.
I'm not optimistic for the future because I do not see that the Israeli government is reacting in a way that will change the path.
In order for there to be peace, there has to be a partner for peace. You have to have an opponent that is interested in wanting to have peace with you. And that's sort of difficult with Hamas. I mean, Hamas is an armed political movement.
In the U.S., protests are popping up across the country supporting both sides. But emotions are running high and the roots of the conflict are deep.
Unfortunately, in order to understand what's going on, it is not enough to just follow the news. You have to learn history.
The U.S. State Department says at least 11 Americans are among those dead from the attacks. Meantime, key Pennsylvania lawmakers are reacting to the attacks on their social media. Governor Josh Shapiro posted, quote, "Our family has shared many special moments in Israel, and our hearts break for those living in this horror now." Senator Bob Casey said, quote, "The United States must stand with Israel and its right to self-defense." And Senator John Fetterman said, quote, "I forcefully condemn these cowardly, horrifying, and unprovoked attacks on Israel by Hamas."